Perfect. All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Ann Endres and I am the Title V Director at Cabrillo College. And tonight we're hosting a Plática with DigitalNEST. And I see lots of Zoom squares and people joining us tonight. So while I'm giving a little welcome and overview of what we're going to be doing, if everyone who's here could use the chat box to introduce yourself, just write your name and your role, if you're a student at Cabrillo College or a community member or a board member or you're with DigitalNEST, it would be lovely to see who's here in the room. So if everyone can do that, that'd be great. All right, so this event that we're holding tonight, our Pláticas series, is part of a new program at Cabrillo. It's called Cabrillo 2+2 CSUMB. And our focus is on developing transfer pathways to CSUMB and helping students transfer faster. And the whole goal is pretty simple. Our goal is for students to spend 2 years at Cabrillo and then 2 years at CSUMB and obtain your bachelor's degree in 4 years. So we do this with a lot of love and extra support. We accomplish this through one-on-one advising. We have a designated counselor for this program. We use 2+2 program maps that we bring Cabrillo and CSUMB faculty together to build those maps and work on program alignment. We have lots of transfer activities built into our program, CSUMB peer mentor support, and lots of connections to resources. So the idea is that the minute that students start at Cabrillo, if they want to transfer to CSUMB, they're on that pathway from the beginning and really getting support to achieve this goal of a degree from CSUMB in 4 years, starting at Cabrillo. So computer science is one of our target programs that we're starting off with. And tonight we're hosting a conversation, a Plática with DigitalNEST alumni talking about their academic and career journeys. So for our students that are interested in computer science or computer information systems, we want to give you a vision of what does that look like, right? It's one thing to kind of choose a major or a program or think you might be interested in computer science, but what does a career look like in computer science and how do I get there? So we have alumni from DigitalNEST who are going to be talking about their career and academic pathways. And we also really want to highlight DigitalNEST as one of our partner organizations so that while students are pursuing their academic goals, whether you're at Cabrillo or CSUMB or UCSC, for students to know that they can take advantage of the services and programs that are at DigitalNEST. So maybe while you're in college, you can also intern at DigitalNEST, build your resume and your skill set all together at the same time, because it really takes this partnership between institutions and organizations to support our students. So from this slide, you can see we're gonna have 3 panelists tonight speaking about their academic and career journeys. And then we're also going to hear directly from DigitalNEST with Monica Gutierrez Lopez. She's going to talk about DigitalNEST and the services that they provide. And especially right now in COVID, during this time of shelter in place, DigitalNEST is open and they have services for our community members, which is, I think, a really important thing to know about right now. Cabrillo College is in a fully remote situation, so we don't have our campus open to our students, but at DigitalNEST, they have tech-enabled study spaces and other supports. So Monica is going to give us a bit more information about that. And just a little overview. So each of our panelists, Martin, Anita, and Oscar, they're each going to have about 10 minutes to talk. And if you have questions as they're talking, please write them in the chat box and we'll keep an eye on those and we'll either get them answered sort of during that 10-minute time or at the end when we have Q&A as well. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn this over to Monica, who's going to tell us about DigitalNEST and the services that they provide.
All right, hi, thank you, Anne. Hi, everyone. Just mic check, can you guys hear me? Okay, great. Well, my name is Monica Gutierrez Lopez. If you at all go into the DigitalNEST and you want to speak to me more, you can call me GL, just because we have two Monicas working at the DigitalNEST. So just so you know, if you're looking for me, I go by GL at the DigitalNEST. But currently I am the Web and IT manager at the DigitalNEST. And most of my responsibility is about working directly with the youth, training them in the technical skills and in the soft skills to develop to develop a positive skill set in order for them to get careers in the future. And so, well, just a little bit about the DigitalNEST. So we are actually we're turning 6 years old this month. And, you know, during our first year, we are an organization that is meant to connect youth ages 14 to 24, to connect them to skill building community through like caring adults, through trainings, workshops, through a variety of networks and community projects. And we do our best to really make ourselves as accessible and create so many opportunities for youth, because we recognize that the youth are the future. And so we want to make sure that they have all of the opportunities currently right now and they're present in order to participate in the workforce and be prosperous in the workforce as well. And we also want to include that like community element in there, that social justice element also, because we want them to recognize that they can still contribute to their community, and they can develop it economically as they're developing as well. And so so to make it more web and IT focused, we offer like a variety of programs. And so in my department, it's called the Web and Information Technology Department. We have two pathways currently that are really solid. It's the web design pathway, which you learn HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and you learn a lot about like UX and UI design. And you develop projects and you develop websites where you make sure to target your user, create these really, really attractive websites that work for your user, not against them, but also look visually appealing to the user. And you have like a series of workshops in that pathway. And then you have the other pathway, which is the web development pathway. So that's a little bit more focused on like the programming side of building websites and web apps. And so there you learn Python, JavaScript, and a variety of frameworks. For example, React Native, Django, Vue.js, all to develop very sophisticated and well-working websites and web apps. And so those are sort of two pathways, and both of those pathways actually lead to this sort of internship-based experience, which is what we call BizNest Prep. So BizNest Prep, it's actually where it's a work experience where they actually get to work with real clients, apply what they've learned in the workshops where they learned HTML, CSS, apply what they've learned in their work with real clients, and feel what it's like to actually be part of the business department, but just not yet, just because business prep is really meant to prepare them to apply for BizNest. And I've actually continued this without even saying what BizNest is, but basically BizNest is a department really meant to pay our members who've completed our pathways in experience, and of course they get paid to work with like real clients, and they work with clients from Santa Cruz County, from Monterey County, from any nearby counties, in order for them to like help uplift that community by helping those local small businesses be as technologically advanced as they can in this time and era. And so we have those two pathways right now. Currently in the works, we actually have two pathways that are emerging, which is the computer and information systems pathway, where they're going to learn more about networking, cybersecurity, how to repair computers, how to sort of support communities through their everyday technical problems. Currently, right now, with COVID, has really turned a lot of our classrooms, our jobs into a virtual experience. So now more than ever, we face a lot of technical challenges. And so we figured that this pathway is going to be really impactful during this time, because we'll be able to, members that begin this pathway will be able to learn networking, learn how to set up hotspots, learn how to troubleshoot, work with the community, work with community members who are technologically challenged, and help them, with their everyday technical problems. So that's one pathway that's emerging. Another pathway that is on the horizon. It's a data pathway. Now that's still in the works a little bit. That's still in the works, but we recognize that data is such an important part in how we tell stories, how organizations grow, and we want and we know that that's a very lucrative career, especially in the industry. So we want to make sure that we're also hitting that mark. So we're piloting a couple of different workshops in that data pathway, but that's also in the works. But we offer a variety of workshops, from game development, from web design, from web to web design, and to data and IT. So if you're looking to if you're curious about where you can start, well, you can start with the DigitalNEST, right? Well, that's just a little bit about the classes that we offer. Other things that, other opportunities that are really coming out is the DigitalNEST. We have opened our doors. We recognize that there is a need for a lot of youth and students who are maybe experiencing unstable internet at home, or don't have access to a lot of well-functioning laptops, or who just need a workspace, right? A lot of students, they don't really prepare to work from their room, especially during COVID, because it just hit so suddenly, right? So DigitalNEST has opened its doors. We've only opened a certain part of the DigitalNEST, and we're following COVID procedures to make sure that our staff are safe, the members are safe, and their families are safe as well. And so if you go to our website, digitalnest.org, you can register for a time slot to come and work at the DigitalNEST. The time slots are between an hour and a half to 2 hours. So our Watsonville site is open, and now our new Salinas site is open. We actually moved downtown to Salinas, and that location is open. It's new. It's looking really, really great. And so if you're curious about what that looks like, please come out and check out the new DigitalNEST site in Salinas. It's basically the same procedure. If you just go on our website, you find a link about how to register to work in our space. It's a very simple process. We do ask that you fill out a quick sign a quick contract, just saying that hey, I'm going to follow COVID procedures, because again, we want to make sure that everyone in our space is safe. And they're protecting their health as well as their family's health. And so once you've already signed that contract, then you just kind of follow the process, and you're able to select the time and day in which you want to come and work at the DigitalNEST, and have access to technology, good Wi-Fi, a workspace where you'll be able to focus more. And another thing that's very exciting, we are actually celebrating our 6th birthday November 17th. It's on Tuesday. We're turning 6. Woo woo. And it's going to be for an hour. It's going to be a virtual experience. And so please come and join us. You're basically, right now you're just kind of getting a taste, right? I'm only sharing a little bit about me, what the DigitalNEST does, and my department. But if you attend the Nest birthday, you're gonna kind of walk through the journey of what we've done the last like 6 years, how many members we've worked with, who are those members, what kind of projects have they created. And so you'll just be able to like walk through that journey and really understand what the Digital Nest does, and how we can help you also. And so if you're looking to register, again, it's on our website, or if you follow us on Instagram, you could all follow us on Instagram from like the most recent updates about the Digital Nest, and you can find everything there, either on our website or our Instagram. And well, just to sum up, I'd like to sort of talk about my experience at the Digital Nest. I've really enjoyed working there. I've been working there for 2 years, almost 2 years and a half now. And I've worked a lot directly with youth where, they come to me for personal problems, or they come to me for like, oh, I need help with this homework, or, hey, I'm thinking about, learning, I'm thinking about taking on a website client, for my friend. And they come to me for all sorts of advice. And so I'm really happy to just like be the person with the boots on the ground, just working with them directly. They help me as much as I help them, and it's probably one of the most valuable things, that one of the most important things that I feel like I do at the Digital Nest is contribute to their growth, and I feel like in a way that they also contribute to mine. And so that's pretty much what I have. Pretty much what I have. Sorry, Anne, I wasn't.
No, that's perfect.
I forgot to hit my time.
That was perfect.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I want to say, especially the Digital Nest, like you said, there's so much that Digital Nest is doing. I want to encourage everybody to check out their website, go to their birthday party, and that this is something that can be in collaboration, in conjunction with Cabrillo or wherever you are, right? Along with, so it's not just for, younger students or high school students. This is for everyone all along their pathway.
Exactly. Yes.
So I'm going to introduce Martin Vargas Vega, a non-traditional Latinx software engineer, philanthropist, and a Digital Nest founding member. Martin was born and raised in Watsonville, California, and son to Maria Luisa and Tomas Vargas. Martin grew up picking raspberries and strawberries with his parents at a young age, and then through the help of the Digital Nest, transitioned into a career in tech. Currently, he's a software engineer at Habu. I don't know if that's how you say it correctly. Okay. A lead in the Latinos in Tech Giving Circle and Dreamers in Tech. And he was also a Cabrillo student, and he'll tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm going to time myself because I don't want to go over time. So my story is very non-traditional for sure. It'll sound crazy, and I hope it does, because I hope that you're like, wow, if that can happen and this person can still get there. I hope that's an inspiration to all of you. So yeah, my name is Martin. I was a founding member of the Nest. I was actually the Nest member number 12. And the reason why I share that is because my journey was everything of first. I didn't have any like a mentor to look up to, didn't even know what software engineering was. I knew I wanted to do it in high school, but never really got a shot. So if I had a book to call like my journey, is that my failures have been my greatest successes. And what that means is that if I was successful at Cabrillo, if I was successful in high school, I would have been a dean or a teacher. I would have never gone into CS. And I'm glad that those things didn't work out, because if they did, I would have been like, oh, I wonder how it would have been if I would have been a software engineer. So my real interest started around maybe 22, 23. That's when I really took CS seriously, because at the time, the reason why I didn't go to a CS degree in the first place was in high school, my counselor said that I wouldn't have been able to qualify for any of the CS programs, either 4 years or whatever. They were really, really good counselors, but I knew, because I went to PB High, I don't know if I said that, Powder Valley High School. And at the time, our classes were not competitive at all. That my math SAT score wasn't good at all. So they just said, look, it'll be easier for you to go into another major and then maybe, get in somewhere else. And then I was like, all right, well, I kind of gave up on that. Then at Cabrillo, through the Nest, I was like, hey, you know what, maybe I'll do the CS degree. But then I'm like, do I really want to do like 7 years? Because I have to do like 5 years of like, to get up all the math, all the CS. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But I know that's at that time, that was the only road that I saw. Then the Nest happened. And as we were evolving together, I just dove into everything. So my goal, what I told myself was, I'm going to get into a tech company through either a project manager route, through a graphic design route, anything, and then lateral to a software engineering route. That was my goal. Whichever way that was, I was going to do it. Turns out I'm not the best graphic designer or video editor, but I tried it and I did it, which it really helps with me now, because I work at a startup right now. So I work at a company known as Habu. It's part of a venture studio. All that really means is there's venture capital and then there's a venture studio. And then the studio pretty much puts money into companies or ideas that they want to create. And I work for both of those. And I work for an individual, his name is Tom. And the reason why he is important is because the only reason, or not the only reason, one of the reasons that I got this job is through the work that I did leading up to that point with the Nest and literally all of my philanthropy and volunteer work. Because all it really took was a couple of calls and then kind of poof, but I'll leave that at the end. So right, I was at Cabrillo. I'm like, oh, I really want to do this. I was going to go to UCLA. Something bad happened there. My admission was revoked. Super sad. I was like, what am I gonna do with my life? Went to Jacob. Jacob was like, Martin, I know you can do these things. I was gonna go to a CS3 program. For those of you that are in CSUMB, I applied. I was about to get in. Life happened again. I'm also the oldest, so I manage kind of like, just like probably a lot of you, my family's both health and finance. So just a bunch of things are kind of going on there. But again, if all of those things played out the way they did, I wouldn't be in the position that I am. But finally, after the UCLA thing didn't happen, the CSM3 didn't happen, there's a program with Adobe. So through the partnership that we were able to build and the work that I was able to do with the Nest, Adobe was able to pay for me to go to a boot camp in San Francisco, which was its own journey on its own. Like I lived out of my car, I lived at random people's houses, but it was amazing because I would have never gone through that, and it was absolutely amazing. When I went through that program with Adobe, I was allowed to intern with them, and that's where I really started to really dig into the tech world, the tech side of those things. The one thing I want to disclose, before I even got into Adobe, I had the hardest time with computer science or just any programming language syntax. A for loop was super hard for me. Explaining my code to someone was super hard for me. And I know that for other individuals, like off the bat, right? When I was at Adobe, I was working next to people that went to Ivy League schools that were like doing these things. Like they're like, yeah, I'm doing this, but I'm just doing this as a placeholder to make my resume look better. And I'm like, this is like the biggest opportunity that I've had. And you're just like shaking it away like it's a nothing. So when I was there, the other thing I'll disclose about that is my internship was a non-technical role. I at the time didn't know how that was going to impact me, but it just meant that when I was applying to jobs in the future, all the recruiters were like, hey, that's not an actual software engineering role. Even though, yeah, you worked at a company and you got experience. But what I learned what to do there was to really network with everyone. And that's really kind of my secret sauce. Meaning everyone knew who I was, knew what I wanted to do. So whenever opportunities kind of came along, they would tell me, they're like, hey, Martin, we support you. I'm not a hiring manager, so I can't hire you, but we appreciate your grit. Fast forward after that, this was literally, I think we're 2019. So after Adobe, I'm like, hey, I think I'm good to go. I think I've done everything that I need to do. I have a little bit of experience. I know how to code. I should be hired. Like, this would be great. What I didn't know is that it would take me about a year to get a job. A year of, the job hunting cycle of talking to a recruiter, being ghosted, thinking everything goes well, and then they just leave you and you're like, but why? And but yeah, so it took me about a year, and during that time I did everything that you could do as like a kind of like a freelancer. So I made websites, I did Uber, I did Lyft, I did DoorDash, I worked at Costco, Costco was probably the funnest job I've ever had in my life. So I did a stalking. So I would go to Costco like at 3 a.m. and then get out like at 12. And then I would study and do what I needed to do for my interviews. Um, and the reason why I share all those things is because at a certain point, I was like, I don't think CS is for me, even though CS is telling me that they need diversity, that they want, Black, brown, female engineers. And I'm here trying to give it up my all. And I'm not getting the same thing back. We fast forward to last year during the summer. Jacob, which is the founder of the Nest, said, "Hey, Tom is saying that he's trying to hire someone. If you're interested, I'll refer you." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, At that point, I was like, I don't have any hope for this. Like, this has happened before. It won't be the same thing." I'm just checking for time, and I was like, it's not going to lead anywhere. Lo and behold, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna connect you to my CTO. He'll talk to you, and then we'll see where that goes." So I was like, "I'm ready. I'm set. I'm at my house. It's like, I don't know. Let's say it's 12. 12 p.m. happens. I don't get a call, and I was like, "Oh, it happened again." And I was like, "All right, I'm fine." And at this point, I was like, "I'm done. I'm done with CS. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is horrible." I get an email maybe the next day and say, "Hey, Martin, I'm sorry. I know my CTO now, and it makes total sense why he did what he did. But at the time, I didn't know him. I was like, you're just like everyone else." And he's like, "Oh, hey, I forgot. Let's set up another call." And I was like, "All right, yeah, blah, blah, blah." So I go to In-N-Out because I'm like, you know what? This is how not serious I am about this, because I know you're not going to call me. He calls me, and I was like, oh, damn. So I'm at In-N-Out, doing a tech interview. And he's like, "Yeah, I see that you did some things, DigitalNEST, you did websites, stuff like that." And he's like, "You know what? Just come to the office and then we'll kind of go from there." And I was like, okay, tech interview, I'm assuming. The reason why I share this is because as you all go through your tech journey, you're going to hit a bunch of walls that some of them are there to test you, and some of them you're like, this is just wrong. There was no difference between me the day before I got my job and the day that the actual day that they're like, "Hey, we're going to offer you a position." It was just really luck and opportunity. But everything leading up to that point, he later told me, he's like, "The only reason we got to where we were is because the validation that Jacob gave you, the validation that the Nest gave you, and the amount of tenacity it took for you to get to this job. After you share whatever you did, you're like, you can handle any coding problem, anything that we could do, just by pure determination, not being able to give up." Right? Like, I could test your algorithms, but that doesn't tell me who the type of worker you are and how you handle adversity. Right? Your journey is a showcase of that. And what I do now is I work as a front-end engineer for a startup. We just raised a Series A for like 15 million, and we have different clients at the moment. One of them I can actively share is Activision. And yeah, it's a plethora. Like, everything, most of the code that I do now is in production. And it's crazy. At Adobe, they would never even let me touch code. They're like, "Yeah, you can't see that." And now it's like I'm just able to kind of do it on the fly. And with that, those are my 10 minutes. So feel free to ask any questions or after.
Martin, you are such a good storyteller. I was riveted by every part of your story. And there just a couple things that I noticed is that just how you never let a setback actually set you back. And whenever the next opportunity came along, you just took that next opportunity. Networking as your secret sauce. That's something that I think in our October Pláticas, we also had some speakers talking about ag specifically and ag business. And one of our speakers talked about, that was one of her big things, was like taking any job, even if it's you think, "Oh, this isn't what I really wanted to do." Her dream was ag business, right? And she also worked in stocking for like late night shift, and what you can learn from any job, right? So we have one question, I think it's a quickie that we can do before our next one. Colton says, how much actual coding do you do in your job on an average day?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I have very limited meetings, so I probably do. Okay, let's lie. I code a lot, and what I entitle as coding is I Google a lot, I debug a lot, and then I actually write code. So I encompass all of that together. So it's a big part of my day. Maybe like 10% of it is meetings, but most of it is writing code, for sure.
All right. And then if more questions come up, then you can put those in there and we'll make sure to pull those into our Q&A at the end. So I'm going to introduce our next panelist, and this is Anita Garcia. She invests her time creating software, mentoring the future generation of computer scientists, enjoying California's beautiful Central Coast, and dreaming about the future. Anita graduated from an award-winning 3-year bachelor's computer science program called CS3 at CSUMB, and is currently a part-time graduate student at Georgia Tech studying computer science through their online Master of Computer Science program. Anita, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Hard to be the speaker after Martin, but I hope I'm as captivating and this isn't like the time that you just go check out and use your restroom. But yeah, I just want to acknowledge 2 things. One, I know the lighting's a little dim in the room, and yes, that is a Christmas tree right behind me. So now that we have lighting out of the way, Anne sort of mentioned this earlier. She was talking about how your journey into industry isn't always linear. And that's certainly the case for me. I kind of just was taking notes just to kind of highlight my path. And I tried to flatten it out as much as possible because there are a lot of twists and turns as well. But I'll start this journey in high school. And I think the reason why I'm going to do this is because you'll see that my academic profile really evolved. The person that I was in high school wasn't the person that I was in college or the person really that I am today. My kind of like affinity towards school has really changed throughout the last several years. So in high school, I did get good grades. You know, I didn't really take a lot of AP classes, and I actually wasn't college bound, not because I couldn't. I did get A's, but I didn't want to, actually. I wasn't very interested in going to college. So probably very different than many of you in the room. I'm sure all of you here, like that's like your dream or whatever. In high school, that wasn't the case for me. My senior year, I actually wanted to get out I actually took classes over the summer, like every year, so that when senior year came, I could leave at lunchtime and just go to work. So that's actually what I did. Like I skipped the extra math classes because if I didn't have to take an extra math class, why would I want to? So I actually just kind of did things my way. And I would say the reason, so at the time I was just being raised by a single dad. It was just me and my dad and my brother at home. And college, my dad wanted me to go to college, but like I said, I didn't really want to. He didn't have the resources. He actually immigrated to the United States at 16. So he didn't really have any like practical advice aside from like, Miha, like this is what you should do. So didn't graduated high school, and didn't go to college and sign up or anything like that. Instead, I was just, working, and then I went abroad for a while and just kind of try to see like what I wanted to do. Anyway, long story short, my dad eventually told me like, if you don't go to college, you're gonna have to pay rent. So I was like, I don't want to do that. So I actually decided to go to college. I enrolled at Hartnell while I was still working because I had to pay my way through college. And then I actually decided to take some classes at MPC as well. And then circled back to Hartnell to take, so I left the science and the math classes for last. Like I didn't want to, I was a little like scared of them, a little intimidated or something. I'm not sure. But somebody that I was working with during that time said like Hartnell had really good math and science classes. So I was like, okay, let's do that. Went to Hartnell for math and science classes. And that is actually when I heard about CS3. I was pitched CS3 and I was actually very intrigued by a very specific statistic. So the statistic was the degree to job ratio. So they probably have changed by now, but in 2013 or 14, when I heard of CS3, it was like for every 10 students that get their degree in like social sciences have to compete for like, no, sorry, for every 100 degrees in social sciences, they have to compete for 10 jobs. And the opposite was true for computer science or any STEM. So it was like for every like 10 jobs, there was 100 people. So I was like, wow, that sounds like a great problem. And it sounds like there's work available. So like theoretically, it sounds great. There's also this message of diversity, as Martin alluded to, like everybody, like if you're a female, Latina, like you're going to hear the message at least once that, hey, you should study computer science. So I like eventually got that message, and that was through my community. I think this was completely accidental, I might add. Like it so happens to be that I love engineering. I feel like I'm good at it. But yeah, at the time, I got into it because my cousin was the very first person that was admitted into CS3. And so my aunt actually came over one day, and she's the one, my tia is the one that told me that I remember if we were like eating chicken soup and like tortillas or something. And she like told me that I should look into this program. So coincidentally, like I did. And then coincidentally, again, the recruiter like reached out, etc. Anyway, so now we're in CS3, and CS3, like I grew. The one thing I will say is I grew exponentially through this program. I think it was the whole model of it, the support that was there. This was a cohort model, so it was like 30 people of us or whatever doing college together, and I really thrived in that structured, like handheld in like environment. I ended up getting 3 internships during that time. One of them was for my professor. So I did like some ag tech work for her. She was doing some research. So I helped like identify diseases on apples. And then she introduced me to a startup called Heavy Connect. And then I did an internship for them over like one of the fall semesters. They were very flexible with my time. And then finally, I went into Silicon Valley. I did a Salesforce internship. At the time, they were one of the top 4 companies in the world, top 4 software engineering companies in the world. So I thought that was like amazing. I would have not done that or seen myself doing that in high school. Like in fact, I remember telling somebody like in high school, like, oh, hey, like I'm gonna, we're catching up, I'm gonna study computer science. And they like said, WTF, Anita, like they actually said the word, which was really funny. And I was just like, yeah, like that's like what I'm doing. Like I like it, I'm good at it. Anyway, so yeah, like Martin said, when you're in Silicon Valley, you're coding with people that are Ivy League schools. I remember one of the first orientations, they had like a word cloud with all the different colleges there. There was like Harvard, there was Stanford, there was Berkeley, so many people from Berkeley. And then there was, I was working directly with someone from Duke. And like, it turns out like there were some classes that I had taken that she hadn't and vice versa. So we were able to actually help each other out, and it wasn't an issue at all. And yeah, so that ended up resulting in me getting a job offer full time. So this is kind of like the pinnacle of any millennials or Gen Z's like story. Like that's amazing. You got like a 6-figure job right after college. But I actually did something that most people probably wouldn't do, and I actually declined the offer. Something in me just wanted to stay local. There was just kind of a different definition of success that I had, and it was a different pace for me. I sort of didn't want to, like, to me, it felt like being in a rat race. And I'm not going to say that's the case for everybody, but for me, there was just something, there's a very small voice, like the other voices were way louder than my little small voice. But I actually listened to my small voice and said, you know what, like success doesn't look one way. So I am actually gonna stay in like Salinas, Monterey County area, and ended up working at CSUMB. And that first semester after graduation, I actually worked full time at CSUMB. I was a computer science education coordinator, so I did like a ton of stuff there. I taught a little bit, or like co-taught. I managed the cohort program, so I helped people break into the industry. And then I actually did some work for the National Science Foundation as an entrepreneurial lead. That was actually incredible. I was the only non-PhD person doing that role. So it was incredible. It was an incredible experience. I definitely learned a lot, was challenged, but it was definitely world class. And, you know, like kind of taking a step back, when you think of like, what can you do in CS? Like the answers are just so many things. Like you could see, like already I've said 3 things that I've done. Like I went into industry, did software engineering, and then I did education, and then, or like some, like in the education space, and then entrepreneurship. So I was, you know, like kind of testing what was out there. Anyway, long story short, what I do now is I am a software engineer. I kind of went back there, but my goal was to do software engineering in the area. So I do work for a company based out of Monterey, and they are contracted by the Department of Defense. So I develop for the United States Department of Defense. And I actually also am still connected to CSUMB. I love to still help students break into the industry. There's a very like, there's an algorithm to get there to like save you headaches and whatnot. And I love to share what that is to students. There's nuanced things to worry about, like your resume, your LinkedIn, and all these things that like I help students with regularly still. And that's pretty much where I'm at now. And what I want for my future actually is to retire early. So I really value work-life balance, and I've kind of delved into this personal finance world recently. Yeah, so again, I wouldn't have thought that I would have been where I'm at now in high school. But yeah, so in the next 6 years, I want to, in probably 2 years, I'll have my master's degree. And then for the next 6 years, I'll probably keep engineering. And then I'll be like partially retired in 6 years, and then probably transition into education or management. Oh, one last thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention was just this academic profile kind of evolution. Was I ended up graduating college with a summa cum laude. So that's like the highest honors. And I like actually spoke at my graduation. And like I had like a 3.9 that I graduated with. And this is a computer science degree, so it's not easy. Even though like maybe CSUMB isn't like the hardest school, it's still not like a cakewalk. So like if you're in high school right now, like you're not all about the, you know, getting the grades or whatever, it doesn't mean that's like who you're going to be in college. And even if you're in college right now, not getting good grades, like in fact, you don't have to get good grades to be in tech either. So like whatever way you want to look at things, like there is room for you in tech. If that's what you want to do, you can definitely get there. Your past or your grades don't really matter. It just kind of matters where you want to go next. So that's all I want to say.
Anita, what another incredible story. This night is like my favorite evening in months is listening to these stories. And I love how I love how much you constantly surprise yourself with, turns out you're completely brilliant and you're doing all these amazing things. So maybe you're surprising yourself, but I bet people all along the way are not surprised by how amazing you've been. And I love that you said that success doesn't look one way, and that you are defining that very specifically for yourself. So you're an inspiration.
Thank you.
So I don't see any questions popping up. I'm going to read this from Cristina Cuevas. Anita, I love your story and how you listened to your inner voice, decided to do work that fed your spirit and allowed you to follow your dream. Inspiring. So yes. I have one question from Colton, and then we'll turn it over to Oscar. What is the repetition of tasks like at your job, or is it generally a computer science job?
So my current job is a software engineer. So I kind of specialize in Java where I'm at. Generally though, I kind of see developing for government in its own kind of bubble in like the whole computer science world. Like usually in Silicon Valley, nobody would ever say, oh, I'm like a Java developer, but kind of at the DoD, that's sort of what they see me as. And that's like what internally people will call me, even though my job is software engineer. I mainly focus on like Java development. So yeah, it's not repetitive at all. Every day looks completely different. The time or like the demands are very, like I would say, different. Also, it's very slow. The pace is very, very slow at the DoD. If there was a spectrum, I would say like startups are on one end where it's like very fast. Like Martin said, he's doing like 90% of his day is coding. That's like the extreme end of the spectrum where you're like pumping out code because like there's nobody else to do it. Like your teams are usually smaller. You're very agile. Like the code base, kind of like the burden of the code base sort of rests on your shoulders. So there's a lot to do. And then the opposite end of that spectrum is probably government work where the pace is very slow. There's a lot of bureaucracy. Like you have to talk to so many people before you can even begin to think about coding. And then like maybe somewhere in the middle is like a bigger tech company where it's like the code, the team is so big. The tasks are very modularized, and you can even come across a situation where two people are kind of working on the same thing. So there's a lot of variety out there with small, medium, big jobs. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, it's not repetitive.
Perfect, Anita, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna introduce our last panelist, and this is Oscar Parra, a solutions engineer for Odaseva, and I hope I pronounced that one right, a French-American startup that specializes in data production, data compliance, and data operations for Salesforce customers. In the past, Oscar has worked as a junior DevOps engineer for mass text marketing platforms, Easy Texting, and as a support engineer for industrial automation software maker, Inductive Automation. Oscar is a first-gen graduate of UC Santa Cruz, where he studied computer science at the Jack Baskin School of Engineering. Oscar is passionate about people and connecting and solving everyday issues for people. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, Anne. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and present. So I put together some slides just because I think maybe some pictures will help explain my story. Can you see my screen? Okay, awesome. So I had a really great conversation just recently with one of my closest friends. Him and I went to high school together, and he actually works as a software engineer at Cisco. And I take a lot of pictures. I love taking pictures, particularly for two reasons. They kind of remind me of my journey, where I was and where I am now. And whenever I'm feeling uncertain about certain things, I always go back to, like, you have these inflection points, either when you get a promotion, or as Anita mentioned, like when you land your first job out of college, you're just like, oh, it actually happened. Like I actually became the thing I actually landed my goal, right? So this was me back in 2013. I was here about 16, maybe 16 and a half years old. And there was a program. So I was born and raised Los Angeles, California. I'm not from the Central California area. And I first got introduced to computer science through an after-school program that was through, there's a nonprofit, I think it's a national nonprofit called Communities in Schools and Creative Arts Agency. And we started learning about web development and HTML and CSS. And there was two people that I met there. And I think that's something about my story is having mentors at every single stage of my career. I can name every single mentor that I've had for the last 8 or 9 years. Two of them were Victor Banuelos, who is a senior software engineer actually at Creative Artists Agency. And he's actually from the same area. He went to UC Santa Cruz, graduated in 2008 with a computer science degree. The recession happened. He actually took a job working as a reception assistant, then became a database administrator. And then when I finally met him in 2013, like 6 years after he graduated, he was finally a software engineer. It's kind of interesting, hearing Martin's story about like how you progress slowly to the position that you'd like to be in, right? And there was also another, his name was uh, Ivan Bermudez, and he was the one that was co-leading the program. So this was me in 2013, and this was me last year. I took this photo pre-COVID. Here I am in San Francisco, and now I am working as an engineer, right? So a lot of stuff has to happen, a lot of magic between both you and the work and the grit and the perseverance and your mentors and having a kind of a strategy and a vision for where you want to be before you get there, right? So I really love this. I wrote something about this some time ago where this is how you kind of think it's going to go. So, you go to high school, you take AP computer science or you take AP classes, you get into a good university and everything's just going to go well and smooth, right? So that was not the way it went at all. You're going to encounter a lot of road bumps. I failed maybe like 5 or 6 classes. When I say failed, there was a couple of classes like I dropped out midway, a couple classes I got a no pass in, a couple classes where I skinned it by my teeth. Like it was like a C, like where we were talking about a 70, maybe a 69.5. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, cool. I passed. And these were classes. So if you're not familiar with UC Santa Cruz computer science program, a lot of the professors come from UC Berkeley or Stanford. It's particularly difficult to get a professorship at a top tier research institution. So a lot of these professors, come from, even more reputable universities than, and the same thing goes for CMC-UMB and Cabrillo College. You have a lot of top academics teaching at these universities. So if you think your classes are hard, it's because they come from very reputable universities, a lot of academics that teach at these particular universities. And I note this because when I went and started working, I started realizing how great my education was. I didn't realize like, oh man, I'm struggling. Yeah, I'm struggling relative to what I'm seeing at my university. And then I went to go work in New York and I saw people that, they couldn't define what object-oriented programming was and, polymorphism and inheritance. And, if I asked them what's the difference between a class instance and, a class definition or something like that. So how did I get involved with the DigitalNEST? There's two mentors of mine. This is Sergio, and this is his name skips me, Juan. And Martin probably knows Juan. So he and I met at UC Santa Cruz and Metra, and he is actually from Watsonville and told me about the DigitalNEST. And so what started to happen was when the DigitalNEST was founded, I started university in 2014. And indirectly, I think a lot of the work that Jacob and the DigitalNEST was doing was inspiring me and motivating me to keep pushing forward, right? You talk about the statistics of Latinx representation in tech. We talk about social equity, economic equity, and we think about like a lot of the people who have generated a lot of wealth through technology in particular. Our voices and our representation isn't really there. So anytime I felt like quitting, it was like, well, do I want to be another number of a student dropout? And I had a lot of, actually older, students who were studying computer science, particularly Latino students who I look up to, who I remember it was tough and hearing them drop out. So I had really great mentors all along the way. And Juan was the one who got me first kind of to know about the Digital Nest, and then I started to connect with Jacob and a couple other Digital Nest members. So my first job, so a lot of people think, and I have a younger brother right now, he's going to Santa Monica Community College. And, one of the things that I think a lot of students may not understand, wouldn't say I necessarily understood it, but I had mentors who told me, you don't have to wait to have professional experience until you graduate. You can have professional experience while in college, right? So I had a great mentor. Her name was Melissa Liu, who actually was running an educational startup. And one of the things that she told me was identify, maybe you can't get a software engineering internship. This was after my sophomore year of college. Maybe you're not ready, but you do know computer science fundamentals and you have taken some courses in teaching. So I had been involved in CalTeach at the time. So what I did was I applied for a job in New York City to go work as a teaching assistant for a nonprofit called All Star Code. That one allowed me to combine what I learned in my computer science classes and then with my teaching. And then it just rolled on from there. So that was back in 2016. And this was 2 years before I even graduated. So by the time I graduated, I already had 2 years of work experience. I came back to UC Santa Cruz for my junior year, and I told them about what I'd done over the summer teaching web development to particularly students of color. And then I started working at UC Santa Cruz as a junior web developer. And then that rolled into my senior year. I founded a startup and then so on. Right? So this was my first job out of college at Inductive Automation. And what I was working as was as a support engineer, particularly um, uh, here you have some software that's installed and you have gateways and you have particularly in factories. So this was industrial automation software. You have these things called PLCs, programmable logic controllers, where you can read and write values from and so on. What they really liked when I interviewed there was one, I had teaching experience, I had development experience, I had startup experience. And so I had this kind of ability to one, communicate technical concepts to people who are both technical and non-technical. And then I also knew how to write Python and Java code, right? And I actually didn't want to be a software engineer when I graduated. Even though the pay was higher to be a software engineer, I enjoyed being more a support engineer because it was more customer facing. I could talk to people, right? Like if you speak to Martin, he may go and get some requirements from a product manager, go speak to other software developers, but it's a couple layers removed directly from the customer. You're not, you're looking at functional requirements. Like if I click on this button, I want it to change this screen and whatnot. I was speaking directly to systems integrators that are implementing the software in factories. Inductive Automation's largest customer is Tesla. So that also was the reason why I wanted to work there too. So that was super cool. Um, so so then I think my final thing here is on Anita's point, right, about success not being one way. When I originally started this kind of journey about computer science was to be a software engineer. A software engineer speaks and works really closely within a software engineering team, and they typically have what's called a product manager who creates requirements with the software team. The software developers take those requirements and then they develop software in with some kind of methodology, maybe agile, waterfall, and then they write test cases and they integrate that environment and then deploy it to production. The difference between that and a solution engineer is what I do at work is now I work on the sales team, and I work really closely with what are called account executives or sales executives. And we are looking at mapping customer requirements. So here we could be talking about a business to business and mapping those particularly to solutions. So here you have like a typical architecture of a web application, say Netflix, and say Netflix wants to integrate a new artificial intelligence solution into their application stack. You would have to understand how that would integrate with their database and the different API gateways and how that would ultimately provide like a business value to Netflix, right? So what I spend most of the time doing is creating technical presentations, demoing technical concepts, and really trying to understand the architecture of the customer that they have, like their application architecture. And I work primarily with Salesforce. So if you're familiar with Salesforce, it's a sales marketing service cloud platform. You can build just about any application with it. So the architectures can get particularly complex, but it's a little bit different from software engineering, where I think the core skills that you're going to need are communication skills, people skills. You're going to have to work with some business. So sometimes you see people who are not even engineers, who are economics or finance majors, who move into solution engineering after spending some time in a sales role, learning the product really well, and then they become a solution engineer because they have both business skills and technical skills, right? So I think my point in this being is that you can study computer science and then realize I want to be a network engineer, a solution engineer, a software engineer. There are a lot of different engineering roles that you can apply yourself to. And particularly for me and my personality type, I like speaking to people. I like working really closely with people. So that's why I prefer to work as a solution engineer than working as a software engineer, writing code most of the time, a little bit further away from a particular customer or a person that I can speak to. But Martin might disagree and he might say, no, I don't want to talk to any customers. So
No.
yeah.
I try to find people. I'm like, talk to me.
So yeah, so it's been a fun journey. I think if I just go back to the slide, there's a lot of stuff that happens here, but I think mentors were key. Indirect mentors like Jacob and Martin, like seeing people who were just a bit older than me continue pushing was something else that was really encouraging. And then there's this book I recently read called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which talks about really understanding your values and your identity. And then working to build processes and then ultimately designing goals around that. Whereas people will typically say, my goal is to be a software engineer, but you may not understand your values and your identity, right? So you may start doing work that you don't like. You may be frustrated and then you're like, well, why am I here in the first place? It's because you're not aligned with your values and your identity. So that would be something I encourage all my mentees currently to do, is work on understanding what they value and what they identify with. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Oscar. That was also amazing. And I just love how all of your stories talk about all these different decision points along the way, and how, that you think something's going to be a straight pathway, but instead there's all these different, not only obstacles, but mentors and people that are givers as well, right? That help shape our path, and just how amazing a career pathway is, and that all of you are pretty young, right? And you have so many more. There's going to be so many more decision points that are coming. And in case you ever want to work at Cabrillo, we are always hiring. So you want to come back and teach, you want to work in our IT department, we would love you. And I know we're at 7:05, but I just want to open up and see if anybody else has any more questions for our panelists before we say goodbye. I see. Thank you all for taking the time to share your stories. It's been very informative and motivating. I think it's been great.
If I could share something,
Yeah.
I'll put my LinkedIn on the chat, and everyone feel free to connect with me. I know that I was I don't know, there was a lot of opportunities that came my way, some that I wasn't, actively looking for. So if I can help anyone in any way, whether that's like a resume review or even like a coding challenge, that's something else that I don't think I shared, where one of the hardest things for me to really have a concept on was like binary search trees. And one of my friends literally like code line by line said, this is what's going on. And if it wasn't for that interaction, I would have been able to get past some of those interviews. And that's something that I don't think I shared enough, that I went to someone and said, I have no idea what's going on. Can you do this? Can you help me? And you'd be surprised how many people are like, yeah, I'll walk you through this. I'll walk you through the whole journey. So that is my offering to everyone.
Yeah, Martin, you talked a lot about networking and even just doing online networking through LinkedIn and connections right here with this group. Most people are local on the Central Coast, so this can be a great network. There was a question that came in from a student. Where did that go? it was a question about to Monica. A student wants to know what classes are required to be taken before a student can intern at DigitalNEST, because I know there's a pathway to go on first. So will you speak to that, Monica?
Yeah, of course. That's a very, very good question. Currently, right now, there are sort of two ways to get into our business department. So the first way is by completing the pathway courses that we have, either the web design or the web development or both. Another way is to already kind of have that drive, that experience. If you've already freelanced, taken your own initiative to find your own clients, do some websites, and or have some type of equivalent to maybe you've taken some classes at Heart Now or Cabrillo. Those are all like all contribute to you getting hired at business. So there's two ways. You don't necessarily have to go through our pathways. You can also take these alternative pathways, whether one, you're a self-starter, you taught yourself.
Did she freeze for everyone?
I think she
It cut out.
froze.
I think it cut out.
Okay.
But
Well,
I think, do you want to still answer, Martine?
yeah. The best thing that I can recommend is just reach out to the Nest. They're very good at assessing to meet you where you are and then help you find those gaps. And then if your pathway is to try to go into business or even just have your own freelance, they can help you with that as well. Whether that's like helping you set up websites or helping you set up just whatever you need to start your own like side gig, they can provide that, given that they already do that at like kind of at scale. So don't be afraid. Even if you're like, I don't know what to do, they will help you.
Yeah,
And could I answer Colton's questions there on
yes,
all?
please.
Okay. All your undergrad education. No, I would say Colton. Unfortunately, no. But I think at the rate at which technology is continuously, changing. So say right now, right after this call, I'm gonna go and work out, and then I'm gonna go ahead and read some technical documentation, something that caught my eye that was particularly interesting. One thing I see of tech, it's just something you have to enjoy. You have to like really fall in love with the process. It's different than just having a job. It's kind of like a profession, like being a medical professional. You want to get better at your job, and you don't do it because you're going to get paid more. It's just you being better at your job is going to bring you that much more joy because you're going to be able to do more, right? Yeah. And one thing I will add, and this is not necessarily a question, something I wanted to mention during the presentation was I think the hardest point is actually in college. Somewhere in college, you're going to hit your lowest point. And I would just say that right, because now I work, and then I have time after work to work on my things. I think in college you're taking a lot of classes, you're probably working a part-time job or two part-time jobs. You have relationships, family relationships. Some of you may be in relationships. Managing all this at a young age is actually really difficult, and if you can get through it and get to the other side, you're going to find that the hardest point was actually somewhere in college. And that's something that I've talked to other engineers about, and they've said, yeah, that class I failed my junior year was my lowest point because my academic advisor told me to drop out, right? Like that would be the hardest point. And then now you see them on the other side, they're working as a software engineer making, well over six figures and stuff. It's like, yeah, I remember telling that advisor, like, no, I'm not going to drop out. I'm going to retake the class, and then retaking it, barely passing it, but then they come out ahead somehow, so yeah. I don't know, Anita, if you had a similar experience. While, I mean, summa cum laude is, I was not a great student in college, but I can only imagine how much studying you had to do to get those kind of grades.
Yeah, I was basically always at school. Like the model was like, if you're not on campus, you're not really learning. But the way I interpreted his question, I thought about it differently. I thought he meant like, will you be able to like get an internship? Like, will you be able to break into the industry with your like just college courses? And the answer is like, college courses are important because they teach you the foundation. They're not really going to teach you like the modern skill sets. But I also like recognize the value of your like fundamentals. Like you should really like know how to implement all your data structures from scratch, for example, like know what's going on under the hood. But like you should also be working on side projects, like be building things every semester. That is going to help you get into an internship, and an internship will help you get into your first job. Like without an internship, it's still possible. You can definitely get a job. It's just going to be harder. And I think everybody will agree with that. And then the second part of your question was, is a bachelor's degree enough? Generally, yes. There are some cases where it's not even needed. Like you'll hear of cases here and there where like people are working at Google, like, and they don't have a degree. I wouldn't personally optimize or even like suggest that you go that route, but it can happen. I actually know someone right now that works at Tesla, and he's just barely now getting his bachelor's degree just to check a box. But he started like working at a local company in QA without a degree, and then went to the courthouse to get a software engineering job, then got a contracting role at Tesla, and then got converted to full time. Like that is pretty cool without having a bachelor's degree. He had a ton of hustle and grit, and he was pumping out a ton of code. So like there's definitely ways to get in without a bachelor's degree, but ultimately like it's just great to have one. But yeah, and if you want to get into data science, like it's almost kind of hard to with just a bachelor's. You almost need like a PhD for data science. So it kind of depends where in computer science you want to go, but software engineering, bachelor's is more than enough. Do you guys agree?
Yes, unless you do a startup, because then no one can.
Yeah, no one's gonna ask you to start up. Yeah.
The one thing I will say, there's many reasons why I'm a really huge advocate, and I know we're super over time, but I will give you Elisa's tech nugget. Is there's a lot of reasons why I would say get a CS degree, because A, education's priceless and they can never take that away from you. But B, on the job side, if you don't have a CS degree, you have about a window that you're considered after you graduate from a 4-year, you're considered a new grad. All those positions are very tailored towards individuals that don't have a lot of experience. If you don't qualify as a new grad, then you start kind of competing against everyone else that does have experience. So that is really, really difficult and hard, because, going against an engineer that has 3 years experience compared to 0, then that makes, the scale is imbalance. The industry is shifting a little bit where, hey, they realize that not everyone has a CS degree. Oscar and Anita can probably attest to this, where marketers or product managers make that switch. They obviously have to put in a lot of work to make that happen, to get into the software engineering role. But if I could go back and give you guys all advice, if you can graduate from a 4-year, do it, because it can help you with the job kind of application process. It won't make it easier, but it'll make it, a little bit more obtainable. Because the other thing that the recruiters don't tell you is after that year that you graduate, you are no longer considered a new grad, and then you're kind of competing with everyone else. So that's just something that I learned after. I didn't know before.
Wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for your time. It was such a gift to have Oscar and Martin and Anita telling your stories. And for everyone who joined, thank you. Thanks for hanging out extra time, and make sure to connect with everyone through Instagram or LinkedIn, because this community is here. We're all here to support each other. So thanks. And tune into our next Pláticas. We're going to have another one soon with business faculty at CSUMB if you're interested in business. All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night.